the gout hypothesis, and my two biggest challenges to gout remission. And we start right now. First, let's review the gout hypothesis. The origin of this idea comes from the work of Dr. Richard Johnson, who has spent decades and literally has written hundreds of papers in regard to what he calls the fructose uric acid model of diabetes, obesity, cardiovascular disease, and by extension gout. On this first slide, you can see that I have drawn an outline of the fructose uric acid model of diabetes, obesity, cardiovascular disease, and gout. This is based on a model where we assume that somebody is eating the standard American diet, more specifically a standard American meal, and most specifically a standard American dinner, which may include a hyperglycemic event, a high load of glucose, along with alcohol and along with added sugar, whose major component driving this hypothesis, fructose. For those of you that have not listened to my videos before, I have included a link here to the gout hypothesis where you can perhaps get more detail before finishing this particular presentation. To summarize, we have the arrival at the brain, the liver, the kidneys, and I argue the chondrocyte, which is in the joint, of a high glucose load, alcohol, and fructose. The glucose represents a hyperglycemic event, and as it enters the liver or the other cell types that I talked about, it will enter glycolysis. That pathway will be completely full, and glucose will be pooled at the beginning of the pathway. This is an important point for later when I get to the fructose metabolism. Alcohol also has a major effect. It enters the liver in an unregulated fashion. And I don't want to get off on a tangent of the alcohol in this presentation, except to say that it has three major effects. And it will activate what we call the polyol pathway, which, remember what I just said, we have a pool of glucose sitting in front of the glycolysis pathway, which also activates the polyol pathway. And this biochemical pathway converts pooled glucose into endogenous fructose. We also have the fructose load sitting on the liver, which is now going to enter in an unregulated fashion, where it will be quantitatively phosphorylated by fructokinase, causing decimation of the ATP load within the liver and the decimation of the phosphate load in the liver. And then through a series of steps, we will get a sudden acute rise in uric acid, which is now going to be driving the effects that can lead to a gout flare. The sudden acute rise in uric acid causes mitochondrial dysfunction, systemic inflammation with the production of the protein JNK1 and IL-1 beta, and the downregulation of the nitric oxide pathway. The fructose metabolism is driving hunger, overeating, fat accumulation, the insulin resistance, the generation of metabolic syndrome, and elevated blood pressure. Now what I would like to do is draw your attention to the left side of the slide and talk about hunger, cravings, and overeating, because there is a wealth of data that suggests that there is a neural network that is connected with fructose metabolism. And we see that cravings for sweet foods, as an example, increases due to fructose metabolism. We know that the chondrocyte, which is within the joint and is the biological cell that is required to maintain the cartilage, is under conditions of low-grade inflammation. And I have talked in past presentations about pushing the chondrocyte over a threshold with the arrival of the deadly triad within the synovial fluid of the joint. The hyperglycemia, the fructose, and the alcohol. It's this cascade that drives the elevation of uric acid up on an intracellular basis that can cause cell death, the recruitment of the innate immune system, the macrophages and the neutrophils that leads to the gout flare. So the key thing is, in order to put gout in remission, we must eliminate the alcohol and the sugar and the processed food that has added sugars in it. And in order to do that, we may well have to deal with cravings. On this slide, what I want to accomplish is to make you aware, in terms of cravings, that we have at least 4 components that drive what we feel are a need to eat certain foods, mainly the sugar and the alcohol. So first we have the brain, which is the central player in this. Then, in terms of eating food and how the food activates this system, we have taste. In other words, when humans taste sweet things, there is an activation in the brain. We have metabolics, right? How a macronutrient is broken down involves signaling to the brain in terms of the brain signaling the need for certain macronutrients, right? If you think about us evolutionarily, we had a need to eat certain foods that provided energy for us. And there's brain signaling involved in that. And then there is the gut. We now know that there is a gut-brain connection involved in the cravings that we have for various types of foods and substances like alcohol. For some of us, getting remission through the low-carb lifestyle may boil down to whether or not we can overcome our cravings for sugar and or alcohol or not. Consider joining a support group or find a group of like-minded friends to do the lifestyle. Hire a health coach. What do you think? Are cravings for sugar and alcohol an issue for you? Leave your comments below and let's get a conversation going. Thank you for watching my presentation. If this is the first time that you've joined me, hit the subscription button and the bell next to it so you know when the next time is that we are publishing a video. And I'll see you guys next week.